All right. So once again, thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Corey Stutes. I'm the Director of Impact Strategy and Grants at United Way of Licking County. And I'm happy to have the honor to moderate these forums and work with our Community Partners Council Planning Committee to put these events together. I just have a few quick announcements before we kick off with our forum. If you didn't see the sign over there, our week of caring is quickly approaching. I know September feels far away, but May probably doesn't feel like it was that long ago, and we're just as far from May as we are from September. So it's going to be here before we know it. With that said, for those of you who are planning to have volunteer projects as part of the week of caring, we do need those by July 17th. Those can be submitted online, or you can email Emma Chapman. So that they can be submitted through our volunteer hub, or you can email Emma Chapman to get those taken care of. Again, July 17th is the cutoff for that. So definitely encourage you to submit those. And then for those of you who are interested in volunteering, we'll have more information probably after July 17th or late July for you to sign up as a volunteer for that. And then our Week of Caring kickoff is, I believe it's on September 11th. If that's a Friday, I can't see that sign over there. But the information is right over there. I can't, you weren't the problem, Kurt. But there is info over there. Also feel free to grab some information about some of the other things that we have over there. We do have the CPC schedule for the rest of the year, so you can check out what forums are coming up. We also have information about our ID replacement program, hygiene hub, volunteer hub, anything that might interest you. We also have some special info over there about an event coming up. Pastor Terry put some stuff on the table. I believe did you just say it's a school supply giveaway? And
yes, kindergarten, 6th grade. It's our 16th year that our church is sponsoring this. And even if you have older children, we really recommend you come out. We'll have hot dogs and games and bouncy house and all that, in addition to the school supplies that are being given out. But we're limited to 250, so we're trying to get the word out to those that have the most need. So there's both flyers and then also postcard size information cards that you can hand out to individuals.
Okay.
They're all on the table there.
Awesome. Yeah. So feel free to take some of those, spread the word, share with anybody that you think would be beneficial for them to be there. And as always, I encourage you to check out the other events that we have coming up throughout the year. Spring was a pretty heavy event season for us, but we're always doing something. So you can feel free to check out unitedwaylc.org/events to see the upcoming Community Partners Council events, as well as other things happening in the community. So with that, we're going to start our conversation today. As you know, we are discussing accessible transportation and focusing on some local experts' opinions and what the work that they have been doing and what we have available here in Licking County. Just want to bring your attention to some things that are on your table. We will have a time at the end of this discussion for you to submit your own questions. There are slips of paper on your tables that say questions for the speakers. Feel free to write things down on those as you think of questions. If someone says something and you want to know more about it, or if there's something that's not covered, you can use that to write your questions. And then when we get to the end of the prepared questions, we will take those and we'll present those to the panel. Also, if you are a first timer and you're not on our mailing list, there are pieces of paper on there where you can put your contact information. You can be sure to be in touch with us via email. So I will go ahead and introduce our panel. You all probably know these guys up here on the panel, but just in case you don't, we are joined by Matt Allison, who's the Executive Director of Licking County Transit. We have Samuel Clark, who's a Provider Support Coordinator at Licking County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And we have Mona Large, who is the Mobility Manager for the Licking County Area Transportation Study. So let's give them a round of applause to welcome them. So as I said, today's topic is getting there safely, accessible transportation for walkers, riders, and drivers. And I'm excited to talk about this topic. Transportation was traditionally a very huge barrier for us in the county, and I'm happy that we've been able to make so much progress through many partnerships, through the work of these folks up here, through many hands that have been working together to help make this a little bit easier for folks. So this is definitely an important topic and what I'm excited to talk about. So panelists, I'd like to start off with our first question. So if you would, could you please give us just a brief interview or a brief overview of the organization that you're with? We're all familiar, but kind of dive into a little bit of what you do related to transportation and or accessibility in Lincoln County.
All right, well, Corey, thank you, and great to be here. I'm Matt Allison with Lincoln County Transit. I serve as the executive director. And so a little bit about Lincoln County Transit. We are the public transit agency for Lincoln County. And we have to really commit to getting that education out there, because a lot of times people don't understand that there is public transit here in Lincoln County. So we offer two types of services: demand response, which is curb to curb service. So you can schedule your ride in advance throughout the whole county, anywhere throughout the county. And it's a very reasonable fee for that service, $4 per trip. And you can schedule that in advance, and that's door-to-door service again throughout the whole county. We also operate in the adjacent counties or contiguous counties for medical trips, and that's 4 trips per day that we go out of county for that purpose. We also have our fixed routes, which is the other type of service that we offer. And we introduced that in 2023, and that's really grown. I'm going to share some numbers with you later, but that's what we do. We're here to serve this community, and glad to be a part of this.
Hi, I'm Samuel. I'm with the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. So kind of what we do is we serve folks with developmental disabilities. They have to be diagnosed before the age of 22. We serve as little as newborns all the way to the end of life. My position there, I'm a provider support coordinator. So, and then I support our direct service professionals that are out in the field with our folks. We're coordinating those services behind the scenes, doing all the fun government paperwork stuff. And I am the transit contact for Matt. So instead of Matt chasing down 100 people at the board, he just gets to contact me. So, yeah.
Hi, Mona Large. I'm with LCATS, which is the Licking County Area Transportation Study. And we are a local MPO, which is a metropolitan planning organization. And we really love acronyms. Basically, we're kind of the planning organization for Licking County. Our office covers a variety of things. We do a lot of safety studies, traffic counts, both vehicle and pedestrian counts, some long range planning. So it just kind of covers a wide variety. My role as a transit planner and mobility manager is kind of a split role. We obviously have been doing lots of planning in our county as we're growing and expanding services. So I work closely with Lincoln County Transit as well as some of our other community transportation providers. And I'm also available to kind of do like a ride along with with anyone but our folks from the Board of DD, or just somebody who's not comfortable hopping on that bus. We haven't had the service for 50 years. So it's no shame in wanting to somebody to help you navigate that your first time. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right, well, thank you all for that. So just so that we all kind of have a level understanding, how do you define or understand accessibility? And how does accessibility impact the decisions that you make in your role?
Well, for transit, we feel like mobility is really a fundamental right for everyone, because if you can't move, you're really going to struggle with healthcare needs, maybe fresh food access, just social needs that you would have. So it's critical to have those things. So it's something we think about every day. And we think, regardless of your age, ability, or your status in life, that you should have the right to those things. So that's what we think about. Also, we're looking at our everything that we do guides this decision when we're thinking about accessibility. We think about are our vehicles accessible? Are those bus stops accessible? And we also feel it's very critical for us to work with our community partners, because we can't do these things in isolation, but it guides everything that we do. And really, we're mandated by many of these things by the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration mandates accessibility for us. So it's top of mind at all times for Lincoln County Transit.
All hard to follow that one up. But how do I define accessibility? I think it's just seeing a barrier and doing whatever you can to make that an opportunity for someone who needs it. Accessibility is at the core of our mission at the board. So if we weren't focused on accessibility, we would be failing the people that we serve. So keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just getting everybody where they need to go, like it's just as simple as that, regardless of how you're trying to get there. I think creating that independence for everybody is very important. And so kind of as we go through different things, for example, when we're planning out some of the bus routes, we actually stop at every single location and we get off and we look at it. And we look at lighting, we look at crosswalks, we look at all those things, like, is this a potential shelter spot? So really just kind of looking, everything we do through that lens of what that looks like for people. Regardless if you're a little one walking to school or, you know, you're on the other end and maybe it takes you an extra minute to get across the street. Just trying to keep that in thought as we're making these plans.
Thank you. It's probably easy for us, a lot of us to just default to thinking of accessibility in terms of wheelchair accessible vehicles or a wheelchair accessible bus stop or something, but there are many accessibility issues to consider across a wide range of transportation methods and frankly, just in daily life. But since we're talking about transportation today, what are some types of accessibility accommodations that are available? So whether those are ones that you've implemented or that you know about that could be implemented.
Yeah, so just a few things like you've said, you've touched on it. Our vehicles are accessible. All Lincoln County Transit vehicles are accessible. So they're lift equipped. So let's say that you would have a mobility device and you need the lift. We can take the lift out, lower it down. You can board with your mobility device. And furthermore, even if someone doesn't have a mobility device and they're like, you know, I still need that. It's tough to get up the steps. So that's something that we have on our vehicles. We also have a securement area. So for a mobility device, every bus where they can be boarded safely and be secure on that route. Something that we're looking at also is audio announcements for our stops. So currently, all of the operators have to call out their stops. So they're calling out their stops, and that really goes above and beyond what's mandated. It's really at transfer locations and high known locations like downtown, or whatever that would be. But we call out every single stop. But we're working on a new technology that will allow us to have automatic stop announcements. So the operator doesn't even have to think about it. Someone in the bus would hear, you know, the next stop is this. So that will be coming in the next few months. So things that we think about. The other thing is we're looking at low floor buses. Currently, it's a real struggle at times because if you're trying to get up our steps, there are like 3 steps, and that could be a challenge. But we are looking at some new types of buses, especially for our fixed routes. And ultimately, maybe some of the demand response, but it's a low floor. And so it's a more modern bus. It would be much more convenient and will be because it's one step up into it. And it also has an air system so that it can be lowered. So if someone says, hey, can you lower the bus for me? It can be lowered down even to a greater extent. So that's going to be a big positive for us. In addition to that, it will help with wheelchair boarding times because I was behind a bus a few weeks ago and I noticed how long it really took. It's great, there's ridership out there, that's what we want. But there was someone with a mobility device, and I noticed it really took a lot of time because that device has to be, you know, the ramp goes down, you bring the device on, you bring it back up, and that can be 5 minutes in some cases. With these new type of buses that we're looking at, it has a ramp that's deployed. So it just comes out from the floor, it goes down, and then you can board that mobility device, wheelchair, in maybe as little as 2 minutes. So it's much better. So those are some things that we're looking at, and I'll turn it over to the other ones here.
So my answer is gonna be a little different. So what are some types of accessibility accommodations? So we're the Board of Developmental Disabilities. So we have different types of accessibility accommodations, but it's all based on need. So someone would come to us and they would have to qualify for certain accommodations. So we work really closely with transit. Our people are dependent on transit. Without it, they would not be able to live independently in the community. Some of our people, are able to drive, but most of our people do need the help of transit, Matt. As far as accessibility accommodations, we've got all kinds of things, not necessarily transportation related, but I mean, we're helping people in all kinds of different life areas. So you can, if you're really into finding out more about that, you could find me after this. So I could talk on and on and on, so.
I don't want to jump ahead to the next question a little bit, but for most of the work that I work with, obviously with partners, they've got ADA accessible vehicles. Catholic Social Services can also provide those accommodations. But kind of on more the pedestrian side, for like sidewalks and things like that, there are ADA regulations. So as those are being put in and as they're being replaced, those upgrades are required. But I think I will save the other thoughts for the sidewalk question.
All right, thank you. So we talked about there are some potential things that, Matt, you mentioned that you were looking at and some other, opportunities, Mona, when the sidewalks are upgraded. But what are some ways that we could make progress to improve accessibility issues? Sounds like some of those are really being considered. But are there certain transportation methods that are typically more or less accessible than others?
Yes, absolutely. So a few things I think we're working on is this. For transit is really long-term funding is one thing we're working on. It's very critical. And let me explain why. With transit, you're getting operating assistance from the federal government, and it's a 50-50 match. So 50% you're getting from the federal government, but you have to have 50% that comes locally to pull down those funds. For capital expenses such as buses, facilities, it's an 80-20 match. They're going to pay 80% of it as long as we can come up with 20% locally. So it's very important for communities as you're looking at transit and accessibility and how we grow this, that we have long-term funding. And we don't want to be in a situation where we're a community that the federal government says, hey, these dollars are available for transit. And then they pass by us because there's another community that has dedicated funding for that local match and we don't have it. So I think that's very important. So those are things that I would say, think about the investment and help us as I think as we educate people in this community about the importance of transit, accessibility, all that we do. I find it's amazing. We were out campaigning a few months back and we had an unsuccessful ballot initiative and it was hard. This was very difficult because there were 8 new ballot initiatives on or an expansion and they all failed. But what we didn't know was in January when we went on the ballot, gas would be $5 a gallon. People would be very concerned about property taxes. So we get it, we understand that. But ours was a very small sales tax that was on the ballot. So that's just the facts of what it was. But I think education, because as I went out, I realized that there were homes that I went to and I was talking about transit. Someone said, oh, we got transit here in Lincoln County. And we know that we really put the word out there, but there's always someone that you miss. Don't you feel like that at times? You educate, you're like, someone still misses it. So you're like, we got more work to do with that. So I think that's a critical piece. The other piece is it's sometimes much better with accessibility in urban areas. You know, you've got amenities there that would make it much easier to get to the bus stop or whatever it looks like. You get out in a rural area, these are back country roads and maybe dirt roads and very limited. Those can be challenging in the transit world.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. We are also not always known. I was at the dentist yesterday and telling someone about my job and they had no idea. The dentist is right by the Board of Developmental Disabilities. So it's just funny how you don't know it unless it's in your world. But to improve accessibility issues, it really comes down to voting. I mean, if these agencies don't get a yes, then we can't brainstorm and come up with new ideas to make things better. So, yeah, that answers it.
And I'm just gonna echo that on that local funding. It's just critical. Like there's so much that we could do if we had the funding. And our population is aging. And so the need for transportation is growing. And so we see that coming, and they're definitely able to handle it, if they're able to have that funding, because all of it, buying buses and providing staff, goes along with that. So I get a lot of calls from people who just get very frustrated, it often works well if you have something coming up next week or the following week and you can plan for that. But when something comes up for this afternoon or for tomorrow, and often those are critical things and it can be very difficult sometimes to make those trips happen. So being able to have the funding to expand the services is critical for everybody.
Thank you. Just to take that a little bit further, obviously funding is an important, we all could agree that's a consensus. So let's imagine whether it's through a levy or some benevolence or a new federal grant, something. Let's imagine all of our funding is taken care of. What then would that look like? How would we make it more accessible with all the funding in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And we realize that, you're limited in funding. Everyone's trying to vie for funding. We get that. But it's very important. Every $1 invested in transit has a $5 economic return. And that's a stat from the American Public Transit Association. Lives change. So I think, for us, what we're looking at is we've got a transit development plan that we work with LCATS on, and they've been a huge partner. We work with DD all the time. And it's critical for us to continue to build on that plan. 900 stakeholders in our community said, we need better transit. And this was back about 2018, 2019. And they called for better transit services. Well, then the pandemic hit, and like everyone, I was at CODA at the time, and we were trying to figure out how are we going to even run this service. It was kind of a nightmare at that time. It was a struggle. And so the transit development plan was put on hold. And now we're building that out. We put in that first route in 2023 on Main Street. And now we're up to 5 bus routes, and I'm going to go over some ridership numbers with you shortly. But it's been tremendous. It's just been growing. We realized that we're not only needing to serve the areas that we're at now, we need to get to Pataskala, Etna. We need to make connections to New Albany, Johnstown, get more services in demand response. Because what we realize is that people can continue to run their fixed routes and they can migrate over to that service, then there will be more availability on the door-to-door or curb-to-curb service. So that's very important for us, but that's what we see the future of, because we've seen the demand already. It's incredible. So there's at times we have to slow it down because we have to think about funding. But in an unlimited world, it's going to be much more expanded than what you've seen so far.
Well, not to take business away from transit, but if we had more money, we'd be able to do more with funding in the area of teaching our people how to drive. So that's a service that we do have. It takes a lot of encouragement to get someone to even consider buying into it. But it is a service that we have for our folks. It's pre-driver's education and on the road driving. And so if we had more funding, it might cost a little less business for Mr. Knapp over here. So he'd have to get creative.
I would love that I would never get a call, but I have to say, I'm sorry, I can't. That it would just be, that would be available.
All right, thank you. So Mona, I know you've been gearing up for this one. I mentioned it earlier. Many areas may not have sidewalks. They're common, most places I would say probably do, but a lot of side streets, maybe some other streets don't have sidewalks. Sometimes, depending on where they are, if they do, they may not be adequate. Maybe they haven't been updated in a long time. What efforts are in place to ensure safety and access for everyone who may need to walk, use a wheelchair, or use another method that requires safe sidewalks and crosswalks?
Yeah, like as I mentioned before, with ADA requirements, as a sidewalk is either put in for the first time, or if it's something that is being restored, it's required to come up to standard. And so instead of those real narrow sidewalks, it's now a requirement of 4 feet. And so it helps to accommodate a wheelchair or just give that little extra space. Also for the curb ramps, the note here what they're called. Truncated domes. They're the little bumpies on the corners when you go down the ramps. Is that indicator that you're about to go into the street. And there's also some requirements like on the slope or the angle that you're not going down too steeply into the road. And I did a walk out it recently and we saw this was in a different county and it actually went right out into the middle of the intersection instead of being like crossing the street at the right angle. So sometimes even when they're done, they have to go back and make sure that the communication happened between the plan and the construction and the end product. And then also for the high visibility crosswalks, making that very clear, that could definitely be tricky. For example, if you're downtown Newark, it's not too terrible to cross the street. Traffic is pretty slow. There's roundabouts slowing everybody down. You've got all those indicators. Versus maybe if you're on 21st Street and you're trying to get across, it is a very different experience. And so just doing as much as you can. And also for the cross signals, having the light and the audio, those are all slowly being upgraded over time. So it doesn't happen overnight, but at least it's moving in the right direction.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I guess just on that, it's a struggle no matter where you are. So we don't have to feel bad in Lincoln County about some of those issues. We always want to improve. But I can tell you in Franklin County, we had issues where we were like, oh, we don't have a good sidewalk here, where it was off of Broad Street out east. We had transit services there and you put in a stop and we were always struggling with that. Like, okay, we don't have sidewalks here. We don't have the amenities we need. So this isn't limited to a county like Lincoln County. Franklin County has the same issues. It just depends on where you are. So it's kind of a universal problem that everyone's trying to solve.
Great, thank you. I have a little bit of an off the cuff question, but something that I was thinking about, just to switch gears a little bit. But as we think about people who maybe rely on whether it's walking or a way to get around that's not using public transit, we see a lot of folks that rely on a bicycle. Are there considerations that are being made for the safety and accessibility of cyclists? That's in anybody's wheelhouse?
I think a part of that is just really communicating and letting everybody get the message out of what is out there currently. Like our county has a very extensive bike path system that travels all across our county and it does connect to different villages and things like that. But I think sometimes people just don't know it's hidden right there behind, a couple blocks off the street to get around. And I think they're they're kind of owned by different people, but trying to put some signage up, right? Like you're on the bike path and the heat pool is this many miles away, or if you're going out here, this is kind of where you're headed. It gets a little bit tricky with private businesses and you're promoting and that sort of thing, but at least like, hey, there are shops here or there's restrooms available in this direction. Just trying to connect the paths to places. And even with transit, I'm trying to let people know that, oh, there's a bike path you can take right here. You don't have to go out on the street to get to your bus stop.
Yeah, that's good to know because I think even personally, I mean, I don't own a bicycle. It's been probably 30 years since I was on a bike, but I often don't think about it. Maybe if I was relying on a bicycle, I would, but using that as a means of getting really across the county, that's a good point. And I think your point to say what's nearby too is kind of important because I have been on the bike trail and you don't really know where, even if you're in the middle of town, you don't know where you are because it is pretty secluded. So that's a really good point. So as our county grows, services have continued to increase. What are some considerations that are being made to make sure that the new or expanded services are as accessible? And I know that it's a requirement to some degree, but what does that thought process look like?
Yeah, again, for us, I think what we're studying is where is the county growing? Where are the needs? And how can we meet those needs? So I think this is ongoing. We work with LCATS weekly and almost daily at times studying these things. Such a huge partnership that we have with them. But I think we're trying to understand that this county has grown tremendously. I remember as a child, we lived in Blacklick and it was all country in Blacklick at that time, rural farm fields. And now we're right at the county line and it's just incredible what you see in Western Lincoln County, what used to be these farm fields, data centers and growth and all these things. So I think it's been a shock to all of us to see this, but what we're doing is monitoring this and seeing how we can best meet the needs of the community. I think in some ways, I think it's hard to keep up with. I mean, it's just shocking, all these things that are happening and occurring, and how do we stay up with it? So I think for us, it's continuing to look at our plans. The transit development plan that was implemented in 2023, adopted in 2019, we're going to update it at the end of this year, early next year. And we're not going to revamp our whole system, by no means, it's working. But we will go back and work with consultants to say, hey, what has changed here? Where could we pursue more transit services to have the greatest impact to this community? So that's our plan.
Yeah, I think for us as the board grows with the growing population, we're actually looking to, in a way, kind of take a step back and hire some of the people that we serve to be advocates for us. And so they'll do more of the speaking about the services, because I mean, it's their life. So, you know, many of us that work at the board, we don't have a developmental disability. So we don't know it the way that they know it. So I'm looking forward to that, working with Anna, who's here today. And we'll be getting them hired, getting them trained, and hopefully they can start talking about different ideas and thoughts that they have around accessible transportation and making sure that the services are where they need to be. So.
Yeah, and also part of LCATS, we're able to go to villages and cities and provide them like an active transportation plan. So like as they're growing and expanding, that is the perfect time to take all those things into consideration. And basically we'll kind of go in and just do a current status of where things are at with them. And then we'll do like some community surveys to get that feedback from the people. Surveys are critical. Anytime anybody asks you for a survey, that it's just so important, because we really do look at that and make decisions based on feedback from the communities. And then we can kind of give them some different scenarios, different levels of phases or things that they could do to make those improvements as they're growing. One other piece, we work very closely with Lincoln County Transit. We've been working with a consultant to do a study of the western side of Lincoln County on expanding services and what that looks like over there. As we all know, it's very different from this part of the county, so the service is definitely going to look a little bit different over there. And just trying to kind of get a handle on that workforce and that traffic flow across county lines. There's just a whole lot going on, so we're also kind of doing a deep dive into that and what that could look like.
Awesome. Now, we did touch a little bit on this earlier when we talked about sidewalks especially, but how big of a factor does geography play in accessibility, whether that's accessibility in general of different places someone might visit, or especially accessible transportation? And how do we try to make transportation available to those who live in rural or underserved areas?
Yeah, this is critical. So we understand the geography of Lincoln County. We're talking about, I think it's the second or third largest county in land size in the state of Ohio. It's huge. So yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover here. For us, we feel that it's very important that we've added the fixed routes, but to also say the demand response, the door-to-door, curb-to-curb service is not going away, because there are folks that are not living in close proximity to a route, and they need that door-to-door service, or maybe functionally, physically, they're not able to board a fixed route bus. So we will continue to have demand response services, and I believe that will continue to grow. So geography plays a huge part in this. For us, I think we also gain efficiencies through our fixed routes, because if you think about it, if we've got people that live in close proximity to each other in high density areas, one bus is much more efficient than operating 5 or 6 or 7 buses going door to door in those areas. We can operate one bus, one driver, and have 12 people in that bus. And so that makes us much more efficient. Again, what does that do? That allows us to be more efficient on the door-to-door service, because if folks can ride that route service, that frees up a trip for someone else, so it makes it more accessible. So for us, you know, it's very critical that we sustain that type of service, the demand response, which goes to rural areas. And then also for us, we're looking at different types of vehicles, to be honest. We use kind of a universal vehicle right now. It's called a 12-2 cutaway, generally speaking. And that means a 12-passenger bus that could have 2 wheelchairs, or you can raise seats and make it an 8-4, where you can have up to 4 wheelchairs. We typically don't do that. But we're looking at other bus types that if we're out in a rural area to have a smaller like van or something low floor, more efficient. Because it's a struggle for our drivers. They'll be out there on some of these rural roads and you're just trying to navigate through there, get into someone's driveway. So for us, accessibility means serving the rural areas and doing it more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's great that we're focusing on that area. Our people that we serve as they become adults, they tend to actually, if they're over on that side of the county, they tend to shift up here because the services are housed up here. So that would be nice if things could, you know, blossom on that side, and they would feel like they have the pressure of moving closer to the services up here, they could stay down there.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. This is like Matt said, it's a very big county with very different areas, and so obviously those more rural areas, like a vehicle's really your only option. It is definitely not safe to walk or bike out there. Most of the streets don't have any curb on them at all, and there's usually a ditch along the side, so definitely a vehicle is the the strong suggestion. And then again, if you're kind of outside of town or village, maybe, you know, walking or biking could be an option, especially utilizing the bike trails or things that are out there.
Yeah, we have this conversation about so many topics, about the difference between rural and more urban or suburban settings in terms of access to really any kind of service. And it becomes really stark when you start thinking about some of the individuals that live in those rural areas. I think we have a tendency to forget who's living in rural areas, or you think you have this idea of, you know, oh, a family, a farmer, or whatever. But we look at the age of individuals that live in those areas, the income level of those individuals, the other needs, and the maps start to overlap. And so we realize like, oh, this is a huge gap in some services. Others are making leaps and bounds to address those, but there's still challenges in doing that. So I think it's really good to think about. You know, I live in an area where I would not, I mean, I do walk around because there's barely any traffic, but if a car came on my road, would know until it's, you know, it's very hilly and curvy and you have to walk in the street, it's unpaved. So it would be a challenge if I didn't have a vehicle or if I couldn't operate a vehicle to get around. So definitely things to think about. And I appreciate all the work and consideration that is being done to address that, because I think it is so important. Our county is changing, but we do still have some really rural areas and even areas that maybe aren't that rural, but still aren't equipped the same way as others. So very important. What should we know? Those of us in the room, maybe those that we can share information with, what should we know about advocating for more accessible spaces and transportation options as members of the public?
I would just stress the importance of helping us to educate. You know, again, like what we talked about, there's that universal problem of people not understanding what's out there. And then furthermore, I think understanding where the need could materialize, like where you may not need transit at this point in your life, but it may be your parents, maybe your grandparents. It could happen at any time to any of us. Some accident occurs and all of a sudden we're dependent upon transit to get around. So I think educating folks about that transit is out there, what services are available. And again, if you're 60 years of age and above, you can ride for no fare. Licking County Transit, the fixed routes are no fare already because of the stakeholder support that we receive. And then the demand response, door-to-door service, 60 and above, because of senior levy funding that helps to fund that portion of it, you can ride at no fare. So I think for us, just educating, helping us, we try to do the best we can with that, but we know that we've got to do more. It's hard to get that message out there. And I would say advocate for us, you know, spread the word, talk to your neighbors, talk to those folks in your community about what services we offer, all of us, and to get that message out there, because it can be just very challenging to share that. For us, again, we continue to work on demand response services and educating about that, because out there in these rural areas, that's one of the great things about Lincoln County. I like that. I think it's beautiful to see these rural areas. It's very charming, but it can create barriers as well. So for us, we'll continue to work on educating folks about that. If you could help us to advocate, it'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I would agree. Education is really important. We can only spread the word about what we do so much. Typically, these agencies in their area only have one person doing community outreach. One person's better than none, but that's a lot for one person to keep pumping the message. So if you know about us and we've got social media channels, I can't speak for transit, but I do know that the board has Instagram, Facebook, all of it. Anna's constantly, and I right here in the audience, is constantly trying to get the word out about our services. She does a wonderful job. But yeah, we definitely need the help in that area too. So.
Yeah, and just continually promoting what is out there again, just to echo that. Another thing I like to encourage people is just to kind of like, we make a plan for retirement, we make a plan about downsizing our home and things like that, but often what happens when we're not able to drive is not a part of that conversation. So I think having it when you're younger, is definitely a lot less scary, right? Like you kind of make a plan, and I speak with a lot of people who are uncomfortable driving after dark. And so, okay, so maybe you can drive during the day to the grocery store, but then you can hop on transit in the evening if you need to go out after dark. Or a lot of people don't like to go out into Columbus, you know what I mean? So let's make some other plans for that. So just kind of making that plan and knowing what's out there. So you don't get caught by surprise, that there are a lot of services out there available, but making that plan of how you can use them, and that can be a blend of using your personal vehicle as well.
Thank you. And to make it easier to know about what's out there, they so kindly put some stuff on the table. So there are route guides for transit as well as our annual reports on your tables. So that can at least give you an idea of, as far as the transit routes, what's out there, some of the services that are offered. But really, there are several organizations that are doing work in this area. So a few of those were mentioned. Catholic Social Services also has transportation. There's other ways. I think the Uber Health, is that still around too? So Uber Health through the health department or health visits. So there are other options as well, and they all play together as part of the system. So I think it's important to make sure that you're aware, but they've made it easy for you by putting some material on the table so you can quickly spread the word about that if you aren't already doing so.
And Corey, just to add that I'm with Jessica Wiley's in the back there. She's gonna hate me for this. But she has done an amazing job for marketing with Licking County Transit. We had virtually nothing a few years ago and taken us so far. She had all the stats on Facebook and all that, how much it's increased. I won't put her on the spot on that, but it's been tremendous.
That's right.
Well, yeah, I would definitely second that, Matt, because it's been, there's just such a great presence, and you make it really easy to get the information across and for people to see where the routes are, how to access the services, how to get a hold of you. So, and there's just constant improvement. With the updates that I get, I think there's always something new that's happening, which is really encouraging because, as we said earlier, transportation had been a major barrier for so long. So it is very encouraging to see progress that's being made, and it really is, up to the hard work of people here and so many others that work with them. So definitely appreciate everything that you guys do. So with that, if you have questions for the panelists that you have written down, feel free to hold those up. We do still have another question for them that's been prepared in advance, but I will come around and grab those questions for you. So if you want to hold those up, I will come and get them. I don't have a helper today, so it's one-handed shot. Okay. All right. That looks like we got some good questions, so I will take a look at these. While I'm doing that, panelists, if we could go with our final question. So I'd like to end on a high note with this portion. So if you would share, what is a success that you're excited about? Maybe that's happened recently or just that you're aware of, but what is a success that you'd like to share with the group today?
Success. Nice. We get to work on all kinds of cool things at the board. Most recent, I'll brag a little bit on myself. So I put together an assembly last week and had 7 of the people that we serve speak in front of a crowd of people about what freedom means to them right before 4th of July. And I was like blown away at how wonderful they did. So that was cool to be a part of that, and hopefully we'll have more assemblies in the future.
And one lady specifically talked about transportation being freedom for her, because she lives in a rural area. So that was very cool that she felt strongly enough to stand up in public and talk about that.
It's awesome. You're all invited to the next assembly.
Is that videotaped by any chance? Or not video?
It was not because I'm not computer savvy, and I was not fortunate enough to have my IT guy there that day. He had to be with his children. So.
Maybe you're assuming everybody can hear your.
Oh. Sorry. No, that's not recorded. The assembly that happened last week at the board was not recorded, but maybe next time.
It was the first one.
Yeah.
Make sure.
Get that dry run.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. A few months ago, I was out riding Licking County Transit and I met a lady riding, and she had hardly left Buckeye Lake in like years. And she had hopped on the deviated fixed route. She came into Keith. She went to Hobby Lobby and bought her little sewing needles and stuff and her crafts. And then she went out to lunch, and she was just so happy to get out. And just sometimes you don't realize how small your space is when you don't have access to a vehicle and to get around. So that was just very encouraging to me. It makes all the hard work definitely worth it when you hear those stories and how it really changes something.
Right with you.
You know, I'll just go back to, I'll talk about the ridership and then I'm gonna turn that. So again, our success has been the growth in ridership, but I'll say that that's lives impacted. And that's what we say internally and externally. To have the 136,000 people, trips taken on transit last year, those were lives that were changed. And that's just really powerful. And so a couple of short quotes from our passengers. This is Ashley. She's been riding with us since our routes launch. She came from Columbus and was used to riding CODA. She sent us this email a few weeks ago. She said, "You are welcome to add that I have gained employment, just reached 90 days, and I have purchased a car. I still plan to be a regular rider, but I have regained complete freedom due to this service. My life is completely restored to its original state as before I arrived here 5 years ago, and it couldn't have been done without you all." And then the next one is from Sean. He says, "I lost my car from a crash and was out of work for 6 months. Thanks to transit and the routes, I was able to get a job and work again. I'm able to provide for my kids now." And he uses the number 5 Buckeye Lake Hebron route, and he can provide child support for his children now. He goes to work there every day. So that's been huge for us. It's just to hear those stories. Some of the things that have occurred is we've expanded our scheduling hours. We've expanded the hours of the route service. So they were 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now they're 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. We added weekend service on routes 1, 2, and 4 because those are really the heavy hitters. So we have Saturday service on those routes, midday service. And our plan will be to expand that. Automated stop announcements, we talked about that. We put on destination signs. If you've seen that on the routes where you can see the header, what route it is. And another cool thing that we implemented is called Intelligent Virtual Assistant. And we call her IVA. It's another acronym. But IVA allows us with scheduling. So if someone would call in, they can get an intelligent virtual assistant. And in the past, someone may call in and they were playing phone tag. It was a struggle. We had one person handling the scheduling calls. So they might call in, try to get a hold of Audrey or Krista, and they're playing phone tag. They would go back on break. They would miss each other. Now with this new system, someone can call in and ask about their trip. That information can be provided. They can cancel a ride, and then ultimately they're going to be able to schedule rides with the system as well. And then if they don't like it, they can be transferred over to a live agent. So that's something that we think is a huge improvement. Back and forth.
All right, thank you. It's always good to hear some of those success stories. I think It's one thing to hear numbers and data, but making that connection between how things are actually impacting people's lives is always such a great opportunity. So thanks for sharing that. We have a lot of questions from from the attendees today, so we'll see what we can get through in the amount of time. Good news is you don't all have to answer these. Some of them are directed to specific people, but if you have input, feel free. This is a casual conversation. This isn't a formal affair here. So first question is for Mona. Mona, someone asks, can you talk more about Safe Streets for All? What is it and how does it relate to accessibility?
Yeah, so Safe Streets for All is a program that Will oversees in our office. And all of the villages and cities are available to apply for it. And Will can walk them through that process. So we've kind of got all the things in place that you're eligible to apply for it. So all that is ready to go. And I believe it is an 80-20 funding, so we'll also work with to get grants and stuff to cover that 80%, but then there's that 20% that would be up to the local village or city. So I can definitely provide you his contact information, so pass that along.
Okay. So someone asked about the fee for demand service riders. You mentioned it was free for people 60 and above, but for those who are not, what is the fee and how is that payment handled?
Sure. So it is $4 to ride. The demand response, the door-to-door, curb-to-curb service. If you are, again, a senior, there's no fare to it, but $4, and you can pay cash on the bus. We also have electronic payment where you can pay in advance on an account, and electronic pass, basically, where you can pay and have money loaded onto your account. You would call our office or stop by. We can load those funds to your account. And that's something new that we added last year and seems to be going very well. So that's how you pay for the service. It's more expensive if you go outside of the county. It's like $20, and then there's an additional $4. But if you still think about that, you're going outside of the county for $20. And these are for medical trips only. We had a young man that's working for us from Denison University as an intern. He's they're paying for this. He's studying data analytics. And so we got him there, but he missed the bus one day and he had to pay for an Uber. And I think he told me it was like $30 or something to go from Granville to Licking County Transit by Uber. So $4, yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. So that's the fee, and you can again pay for it again on the bus. You can use the e-pass, electronic pass program, and in the future we even have tap to pay as our hope on the bus as well.
All right, thank you. And the benefit there is that it's $4 no matter what time, no matter when you're doing it. Uber is not the case because it can fluctuate wildly depending on when. Yeah. So those of you who have ever needed to use Uber, it seems like the times you need it are the times when it's always the most expensive because everybody needs it, and so it can really add up really quickly.
Excuse me, Matt, is that one way, $4 to get you from your home, let's say, out to Hobby Lobby, and then $4 to get you back home again?
That's correct, Mark.
Okay.
Yes, $4 each way. And again, we think it's still very economical when you compare it. So yes, $4 each way.
All right, thank you. This one is an interesting question. Do we know some of the main reasons why people utilize public transit, whether that's going to work, going to medical appointments, groceries, etc.? And if there is research regarding this, is there a way that other organizations can be aware of that they might be able to tailor their services or use that information as well?
Yeah, it gets a little tricky in the public transit world of knowing all this data. Now, you do know it when you're doing door-to-door, curb-to-curb service, because we know exactly where they're going, who they are, and you have that data. Now, when you're riding fixed route service, it's more anonymous, or like the term is anonymized data. And even major transit agencies struggle with this because you don't really know what someone's doing because they're getting on the bus, they're riding, they're getting off, and you may not know where they're going. We did a survey last year, no, it's actually 2024. We plan on doing an updated survey with our transit development plan to ask people, what is your purpose for riding? Where are you going? And this is totally voluntary. They don't have to answer, but if they would like to, they can give us that information. So we'll have more data on that. What we see is people going to medical appointments primarily, employment, and social needs as well, and then fresh food access. I think those are the main purposes of transit, and a little bit of everything else in between, but those are the key points of transit and why you're riding.
All right, thank you. So if there is a rural area that you were considering service in, what would be some of the thought process that you would have that would go into considering maybe a stop or some other service in a rural area?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we get calls about this every so often. It's like, in Utica, they don't really have a grocery store up there, right? Like they'd like a route, but they don't necessarily have the numbers to make that happen, So I always encourage them like, hey, you know what? You can request a ride every Thursday afternoon that they will bring a bus up to Utica and you've got 5 friends that want to come down to Newark. Like you could do that for sure. So I think sometimes people forget that like, oh, it's not just, the fixed route, like there is a service for me. And I believe it's up to 3 months out. You can book your trips. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've actually extended that for extended schedules.
Okay,
So-
yeah. So like if you need to go run to your errands the same time, you can have that booked ahead of time. And also there's another village, they were very excited about getting a service. And I was like, you know what, you can do the same thing. Call, have a group come in and you guys can ride the fixed route. Like it's not, you can come down Newark and ride the routes and then get a ride back. So that's definitely available.
Just another point to that, sometimes when you're looking at routes, there's a lot that goes into these. People, sometimes you can think it's really simple to throw a route together. And Jess could speak to this. She's helped work on this, our whole team. But there's a lot of science that goes into it. You're trying to put these stops in the right locations. And then you have to be careful because you'll get various requests. Hey, can you put a stop here? Can you put one there? And you'd love to put stops everywhere, but if you do that in the transit world, it will become so slow and ineffective because we're stopping here, we're stopping 50 feet there, we're going over that way. So it's a balancing act of trying to get stops that make the most sense and you space those out so that folks can walk to the stop reasonably, but you don't want to put too many in because this bus will be going all over the place and it just doesn't make sense and it makes it inefficient. So that's some of the science behind bus routes and how they work. We had one at Coda like that, and she was a great lady, but she was advocating all the time for all these different stops, and we had routes like, we didn't even know if she still lived in the neighborhood or not, but Miss Smith or whatever it was, asked for a stop back here one time, and we're still going there. We're like, is she even still there? Or does she still live in the neighborhood? So you have to be careful with those stops, with those requests, but you're trying to make sense of it to where there's the largest need, and that's where you're putting the stops in.
Thank you. And Matt, that kind of goes perfectly into another question someone asked specifically about, is there a way to pursue access points for nonprofits if they want to have, or other organizations, if they want to be on a route or say, hey, can you consider a route that might serve us? Is there a way for folks to do that?
Yes, certainly. We have these discussions all the time. We look at our routes. We try to determine where they are. We have a bi-weekly meeting with LCATS, and it's called our deviated fixed route meeting, where we're studying that. And what is the feedback that we're hearing? What changes could we make? And does it make sense? And could we move a stop closer to another agency? We look at those things. But yes, that's what we do all the time. You can communicate with us. I can't promise anything because if you promised it to everyone, I'm telling you, we would have, where you have 30 stops on the route, you might have 300. It's just not effective. So we try to work together. The other thing with our routes is they're called deviated fixed routes. So if someone would call us and say, hey, I can't quite get to that bus stop, can you deviate, come off that main route and pick me up and then come back to the route? And in a limited manner, we can do that. And that's why they're called deviated fixed routes. Most CODA routes are just direct and they're never coming off of that. We have what are called deviations where time permits.
Well, that's good to know. So, thank you for that, because that is something I hear a lot too from fun runners, like, oh, I wish transit came to our area, or they come close, but it's still kind of a far walk or whatever. So I know that is a thing that a lot of people think about. Couple of questions here. Again, sorry, Matt, these are probably gonna be for you. Someone asks, how many drivers, do you have? And then they also asked, what would it take to have Sunday transportation?
Yeah, so we have, we're getting close to 50 drivers now. And, so we had 24 operators in 2022. And this is like a, I use that term, a universal problem in the transit world, having enough operators. So Coda has the same problem. They cut all of their operators back when the pandemic happened because we didn't know what was going to happen to the whole world, basically. So they went from 700 drivers down to 500 and some, and then they struggled to get back to have enough. So we really worked on morale internally, just worked with our team, and we've gotten close back to 50. It ebbs and flows, but that's the number of drivers we have. We still need a few more because we've added so much service, and we need probably another 5 or 6. We tend to draw a more senior demographic for drivers. That's great. They're great workers. But sometimes they'll have 5, 10 years and then it's time for them to retire again. So we understand that we have to keep hiring. Sunday service is something I think, again, for us, we think about. It's important for us to look at that in the future. But we're probably not there yet because we used to have Sunday service and the ridership was very low. But that will be something we'll be looking at in the future and as we look at the funding to sustain that.
Especially Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
Amen.
But yet again, comes down to funding. That's right, as with everything. This is an interesting question, something I don't know that I've thought about. Someone asked, are all transit options integrated with Google Maps as far as buses, trails, etc.? Is there a way to see that on Google Maps?
They're currently not, but as a county and LCATS, we have been working with a consultant to create an app, and we are like testing in the field right now, and it's working really well, called Venture Local. And it's gonna connect Licking County Transit as well as Catholic Social Services, and hope to bring some other partners on in the future, where you can actually see what's available. Like live, so you're at the doctor and they want to see you back in 2 days. You can open the app and see that, oh, Licking County Transit can get me here at 9, or Catholic Social Services could bring me at 2, and you would have that right there, and be able to book your appointment and know that you have a ride. So on the app, it's very seamless. Like it doesn't feel like you're working through a bunch of different agencies or a bunch of different agencies' software to make that happen. So as a rider, it's very streamlined. So it's doing all the hard work on the back end, connecting to their software system in their offices. So even though it's not Google Maps, like it's amazing. There's some tools out there now that other people are using. They're kind of like an online directory, but nobody's actually doing this kind of connectivity between them. And Matt also mentioned that they can go out of county for medical, and Catholic Services also does that. They actually go across the whole state of Ohio. So we can use that app to coordinate some of those outer county trips or those trips that are further away. And then that gives them more availability during the day.
All right, thank you. That's really interesting. Good to know about the forthcoming app. When that is available, how will folks know when it's available or how to access it?
We will be sharing it everywhere we go. Yeah, it is, so Venture Local, I mean, it's ready to go. Like everything is set. We're just doing those final testings, and actually we're working with the Veterans Commission to, some of their folks are actually gonna kind of try it out and give us some feedback before we open up to everybody, but it's very, very close.
Cool. Very exciting. Someone asked, are there vouchers available for businesses that they can purchase for their employees if they might need to utilize a service to get to their job?
Yes, certainly. You can purchase passes in advance for your employees or maybe your clients. So yes, you can come to transit. We have passes available. We can do it with a hard pass. We still have those. And then we could also do electronic passes as well. So yes, there's an option for both of those. And then just to go back to add to the last question discussion, there's also live tracking now of our fixed route buses. So you can actually see on the, go to transit.lickingcounty.gov and you can pull up the routes, and then you'll be able to see those buses and you'll see in real time where they are. And that's huge for a customer. If you're out there waiting at a stop, like, is the bus coming? Where is it? And you can have that peace of mind to say, okay, I see it coming down the road now. So that's a nice feature. So check it out, transit.lincolncounty.gov. You can pull up the routes and you'll see live tracking. Jess?
There's a QR code on that front page of the route guide that you
Okay.
can scan to. But
So Jess said on the route guide that she passed out, there's a QR code that you can just scan. It'll take you right to this. Thank you, Jess.
Awesome, thank you.
everybody can show what it happened.
Another thing that I know is being talked about and actively worked on, but if you could share some information. Someone asked, how do we create or support county crossover transit, for example, from Licking County to Franklin County?
Sure, yeah. So across Ohio, there are mobility managers that cover almost every county, and we do work very closely together, and specifically for that, like, transit gets tricky at that county line, like literally at the county line, that's where the funding stops. And the intent is that you're keeping the money in your community, but it gets very tricky when you live near that line and you work and you shop and you cross it, and you don't care about the county line, right? And so we can work with the other mobility managers and with the transit agencies to kind of try to do like a meetup spot or things like that to kind of help you make that connection. But county lines are definitely tricky.
And sorry, like continuation, like are the, like the pickup stops, are they shared locations where get on one and jump on another?
So for that study that we're doing on the western side of the county, yes, we're gonna be working with CODA to make those stops happen. The other counties don't really have any kind of routes that can connect near us to make that happen. So we can kind of identify like locations that kind of make sense.
Yeah.
But no, definitely working with CODA and also with Delaware County. They've got a kind of a different model, but making sure we can kind of make that happen.
And just to add to that, we make those connections currently, not to the level that we're going to go to with those, what we call mobility hubs. But currently, we had a customer call us a few months ago and they were wanting to connect to go, they worked at Franklin County government, downtown Columbus. So we worked it out where they would ride, one of our demand response, service buses. They would go to a stop for CODA on Broad Street near the Limited, near Pataskala, Limited there. So we'd let them off that stop and they could pick up CODA, transfer and move on. And we do the same thing at CODA has a location called Hanson and Maine, which is the end of the line for them currently on their number 2 route off of Main Street, Reynoldsburg. And we go to that location as well. We make connections currently if needed.
All right, thank you. I obviously, Matt and Mona, you guys know, but I've had the opportunity to take part in a couple of focus groups relating to some service ideas and planning. And one of the things that really was so impressive to me, especially as we're thinking about not just connections to the county, but just kind of some service in general, is the amount of consideration that goes into making sure that even if there's a stop, that then those people can still get to their destination if it's not at the stop. And if we think about those industrial areas or some kind of a manufacturer or something like that, those buildings are massive. So maybe you might not get dropped off where you need to go. So just the level of thought and conversation and consideration that goes into it, it just really impressed upon me about how intentional it is and the amount of really the amount of care that goes into it. So it's been fun for me to kind of get some of that thought process and think about things that I maybe don't normally think about. But it really, like I said, impressed upon me how much goes into this and just how important it is, because you really are thinking about making sure that everybody can get to where they're going. Yeah, really, really important. Yeah.
So for example, over at where the warehouses are and everything, and like New Albany has like these amazing complete streets with like bike trails and separated lanes and everything, and it's phenomenal, and they do that as part of their zoning. But yet the buildings are so massive and large, you have vehicles to get around the building inside, right? And so just dropping somebody off 2 buildings down is not necessarily the answer, even when you have this amazing path and everything. So just kind of looking at some transportation models that take all that into account and a different kind of service to actually get people closer to the door. It's just a very different scenario.
Yeah, you know, you think if you work in a building that's hundreds of thousands of square feet or more, the door could be, or your door, wherever you're going, could be quite far from
That's right.
the main entrance or wherever. I mean, you know, that could. So in some cases, you could be walking probably a quarter of a mile easily, just
Yeah.
if you're, depending on where you're going. So it definitely presents a challenge.
Yeah, well, now we're working on that design for that, like Mona said. So in Western Licking County, you would have routes that would go there that are called like express routes or commuter routes. And then you would have a more like a micro transit in that zone to get people door to door to where they need to go. So we're still working on that model. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's a little more costly, but it almost has to be done that way, because how does someone walk, like Corey's saying, a half a mile or, you know, a mile back to some building? So we're still analyzing that.
All right, thank you. This last question, I'm going to guess is more of a question for me, but it provides an opportunity to go behind the scenes a little bit. So someone asked, why isn't Catholic Social Services transportation on the panel? And that's a great question. So we do, when we're planning our panels for these, we try to think of organizations or individuals who work within the topic or are experts in the topic, but also can speak broadly on it. And generally, we cast a wide net to see who all is available and who can be on the panel. Sometimes that leaves folks out. It's definitely not intentional, but we also don't want too many groups that are all going to have similar answers. We try to make it a broad panel. So absolutely no intention to exclude anybody. It's just a matter of who's available, who do we have contacts with, who can we get during this time, who, you know, that kind of thing. But with that said, we are always open to connections or contacts for panelists, connections about ideas, of course, too, for topics. But if you see a topic coming up and if it's something that you directly work with, or if you know someone who does, we are very, very open to your suggestions for panelists or knowing who you would like to hear from as well. So that's an opportunity for you guys to provide your input about our panel as well. But I did just want to touch on that because I don't want to make it seem that we're excluding organizations. It's just a practical matter usually of who gets back with us or who can we reach out to make the time work. So that is the end of all of the questions we have. Yeah.
Can I ask one?
Yeah, of course. We do still have some time, so, yeah.
So I have a story that will lead into my question, so bear with me. You know, we talked about how do people communicate about accessibility. We were in a situation recently where we were at an event where people could talk to their state lawmakers. And we had a group of people with disabilities that we work with, and they came in and they said, you know, what would really be great is if there were accessible picnic tables at one of the parks. And the lawmaker was like, that's really great, but also like, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree, talking to your state lawmaker about a specific park in Heath. So I talked to the folks and I said, hey, have you considered going to a Heath City Council meeting? And they were kind of like, oh, we never thought of that. So I guess my ask to everybody here is, if you know people that have accessibility needs, please encourage them to go and talk about them to the people who can actually help make those decisions and help direct them in the right way. Because I think that odds are probably pretty good that no one on Heath City Council has ever thought about what an accessible picnic table looks like. And if they know about it, next time they go to buy one, they might buy one. Because that's beneficial to a lot more people than just the people that go and talk about it to the lawmaker. So I guess my ask for everybody is, please direct folks and encourage folks to speak up when they have those accessibility needs, because a lot of times the people making the decisions don't know about them. And I guess my question for you guys, kind of piggybacking on that, is who should we in the community be talking to lawmaker wise about transit and accessibility in transportation? Because at the end of the day, like, I know our organizations are amazing, but we're part of a big system. And a lot of the ways the funding is allocated is not up to us, it's up to lawmakers and decision makers. So who do you recommend, like, if we have ideas or thoughts on accessible transportation, like what who politically should we be talking to in terms of a representative?
You know, I think that's a great question. I would say it's not really limited. Now, I would start locally with our county commissioners who have been wonderful. And I mean this sincerely. It starts with them. They oversee Licking County Transit. We fall under them as a government agency. I can't say enough of how much they've advocated for us, helped us, said we want this to really take off. So county commissioners, I think your local elected officials, I think your state representatives, like you said, your city councils, because I think the more that we get the word out there, it's the old saying, what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it's a fact, right? No matter what we do, when you get someone in your ear like, hey, I need help here. I know it's important to me when I hear that, like, what is that? What's going on? How can we help you? And we try to find a solution. So I don't think it's limited to just say, it's one area, you know, or one person or one group. Everyone. Now, you may hone in after that and say, okay, I realize this is the key person, it's the Heath City Council that can help with this in this area. But I would put it out there, blanket it as much as you can and not limit it to say, I'm only talking to these people about this issue. Because the more we communicate and educate, those circles start to talk too. Hey, I spoke to Anna, I spoke to, you know, Samuel, whomever it is. And that word gets out there. So that would be my suggestion. I wouldn't limit it.
Patty?
Two quick things. I really appreciate the hospital initiating or donating dollars to help you start this whole thing. That is amazing. And the other thing is, I took a ride just to see what it was like. And that driver was wonderful. It was kind, helpful, pointed things out like a tour guide.
You know, I figure that, and back to your point about Licking Memorial Health, this wouldn't have happened without them. I remember Matt Hill, who works for LCATS, you guys, many of you know Matt Hill as well, and Mona as well. But he and I went to our first meeting, and when we started to launch these routes, we needed funding assistance. And we started with LMH. You're praying and everything before you get there. You're just hopeful that they would be receptive. That's how it was. And you're nervous, to be honest. But I can tell you, when we walked in there from Ben Broyles, he actually called me and we were looking at a location for our transfer location, and we thought it would be at the hospital. He said, Matt, we've got a better location for you. He said, let's look at 1717 West Main.
That's where I got us.
Yeah, and so then we met with Rob Montagny, who's obviously the president, and Ben. And we said, we need help to get this launched. They said, we're committed. We're in right now. And they've stayed committed. And I can't say enough about them. And thank you for the bus operator. We'd like to hear that too. We share that.
Kirk?
To circle back to the impact part of it, could you elaborate a little bit? Didn't we during the awards banquet honor someone?
Yeah.
Whose life was profoundly changed.
Yeah.
By the transit. You can tell more.
Yeah,
Better
so
than I.
at our annual breakfast every year, we give out a lot of awards. Many of them are campaign based, but we give out 2 awards that are more community focused, funded partner focused. One of those is the Ken Johnson Award, which Kirk is the recipient of. We were very happy to honor him with that for his volunteer services. But the other one we give out is the Hope Award, and that recognizes someone who has been a recipient of services of a funded partner who has gone on to be an exemplar of their mission and the work that they do. And so we were really happy to honor Jeff Clemens, is that his first name? Who is our most recent Hope Award recipient, who had a really touching story about really how his life was changed by being able to use transit and utilizing it to get to work, saving him hours in his day that he used to spend walking to work, and now he's able to ride. And he has gone on, and he was on the news, and he has been really a very outspoken community advocate for transit. And it's those stories, again, putting a face behind the service, I think is so important, because it's one thing to hear about it. You're always bombarded with information, and you're always hearing things about this organization or that organization. But when you connect that to a person, and you really see that the mission of that organization personified and the impact that it's making in someone's life, I think that's so important. And that really is a huge part, I think, of the advocacy, you know, Anna, as you were talking about advocating for someone. It's not just who do you talk to, but it's who is this about? And what are those stories that that person could be impacted by this? How is that going to impact someone's life? Or how is someone's life made more difficult by the absence of such a thing? So I think, you know, using those opportunities to share individual stories is so important. And it, you know, for those of us that have worked in nonprofits or social service industries or any kind of in a role as a helper or in a service role, you really need those because it can be challenging work and it gets draining and it's exhausting, but you need that perspective of those individual experiences and to put a face to that work is so important. So we were really happy to honor Jeff with that award, and I think it just goes to show the work that's being done throughout the community. So. And Patty, to your point, we owe a lot to Licking Memorial because, you know, they're one of our over there annual sponsors. They have been annual sponsors of ours for several years. Think about, you know, last month we talked about food deserts and LMH with the most busy food pantry site in the county. So they really are making a big impact as well. But I think it also takes it a step to talk about how important the network is because none of us works in isolation. We all rely on each other, whether that's for service or for funding or for other support. So, you know, the fact of you being here today, all of you, that builds this network. We learn about each other. But I think in a community like ours, you know, where we're growing, but we're still pretty small, it's so important that we can depend on each other. And I think that's an opportunity because we do know who those people are. In Columbus, I might, in my role, might not be able to call the president of the hospital system, but in Licking County, I know I can. Or the president, the CEO of the transit, or whoever it might be, a county commissioner, you know, we have the ability to personally reach out to these people because we know them. And I think that that's a strength that we've been able to utilize and it's only going to continue to carry us. So, but it was a great point, Patty, because they do support a lot. Did you have Chris?
Yeah, this is more of a comment, but I'm excited to see us bridge last panel about food access in the county, and the Lincoln County or Food Council itself, which is largely this table. We're working on how to tell the whole story about food access, but the missing link in that is, and then how do you get there? And so we're eager to partner with everyone who's on the panel today to maybe like bridge these two conversations, one about the what and then how. So that could be really fun. We'll reach out.
Yeah, love it. I have been all about thinking on a system level rather than a specific issue level. And it's important, I think, because it is so connected and one thing impacts another thing and it's like dominoes. If one falls over, the rest go. So it is very important. Do we have any other last thoughts, comments? Yeah.
So I work with the youth in Licking County schools and many of them lack access to transportation outside of the school bus. So I'm wondering how can I educate the youth, specifically my high school students, on how to utilize public transit in a safe way?
Sure. All right, you want to talk about the education with?
Sure.
And then we'll talk about our piece as well.
Yeah, I've actually done a ride along with one of the middle schools with their special needs class. We went out and fortunately there's a bus stop right outside the school. So we went out and we hopped on the bus and took them to Walmart and they had like a $10 gift card. So they had to use their budgeting skills to figure out what to buy for their lunch. And then we went over to the transit station or the transfer station and actually the driver was amazing. She showed them like how to use the emergency windows and things like that. And then we went over to the park and they ate their lunch and ran around and then we did a trip back to the school and they were like, wow, we could use this, you know, like, yeah, like these are here, you know, like definitely communicate with your parents and let them know where you're going and where you're going to be. But no, it's available for them. I believe it's 8 and up.
Yeah, so they can ride on their own, called in advance, 7 to 12 called in advance. So let's say you had someone that they said, hey, he's 10 years old. A mother calls in and says, Johnny's gonna get on the bus here and his uncle's gonna pick him up here. We know about that in advance. Younger than that, 7 and below, they can't. They have to ride with a chaperone parent, whatever they would be. Above that age, someone could ride, a teenager could ride, and they're allowed to ride. Now, I think part of it's the education piece. And we're also glad to assist if you need help. Like if you said, hey, I would like to have a group come. So it could be Mona, it could be someone from our team, and we'll ride along with you and kind of show you how the system works. So we can assist you with that as well. We've done a lot of that with the Licking County Community Center in Granville. They've done a few of those rides like that along, and we've had some other groups, but we can assist you with setting up a ride and show you how the system works.
Great, that's good to know. I didn't know that that was something that was even available, so thanks for asking that question, because that's good to know. And to think about the age, we tend to think about transportation specifically with adults or getting to work or getting to the grocery store. But access for kids to get to school, if they are in an area where they don't have a bus, or if they, for whatever reason, don't use the bus or can't use the bus, that is really interesting to think about, to use transit.
One thing I failed to add, just so you can help educate on this as well, is if someone is riding a bus, like let's say a route, and they have a 1-year-old child, this is tough, but they have to bring their own car seat, because we can't have a bunch of car seats on the bus, nor do you know if it would fit their child correctly. So there's a huge liability with that. So sometimes there's confusion with parents, and they'll show up at the stop like, well, you need to have your child in a car seat, because these are not like COTA buses. Our buses have seat belts. You have to be seat belted in. COTA buses are on another level. Those are big 40-foot, 32,000-pound buses that don't have seat belts. So it's a different status. And those are CDL required buses. Ours are not. But that's one piece that we have to educate folks on, is just if you have a child that needs to be in a car seat in a personal vehicle, the child would need to be in that car seat in our bus as well.
All right. All right, everyone. Well, I want to say thank you for joining us this morning. Still got some time, so if you want to stick around and chit chat, get some more food or coffee, you're totally welcome to do that. Don't forget to grab one of those schedules of our Community Partners Council forums that are coming up for the rest of the year. Next month, in August, we will be talking about the road to kindergarten, preparing for school success. That's going to be a really great conversation. We're looking forward to that one as well. We're going to have some folks that kind of represent a wide range of what it means to prepare a kid for school. Kindergarten readiness starts at birth, not just at age 4 or 5 or whenever you start to think about school. So join us for that one. And then in September, we will be talking about the arts. So it's outside of the range of topics that we typically talk about, but we're going to be linking it in to social services and the importance that the arts plays in the social service delivery, as well as youth development and that kind of thing. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Join us for that. And then October, we'll be talking about the Community Health Improvement Plan. So many of you are on that committee or involved with that in some way, but if you don't know what it is, it will be really important conversation to learn about that work. So just to give you an idea of what's coming up, but of course, grab one of those forms over there. Again, you can check out our website, unitedwaylc.org/events. And you can always just call me, reach out, catch one of us, be like, hey, what's going on? What's coming up? And we'll be more than happy to tell you. Again, reminder to submit your week of caring. Volunteer projects is July 17th. So you've got just a little over a week to do that. And then put the kickoff on your calendar. The date is over there. I think from here, it looks like there's a QR code on there. I'm really struggling to see what's on that poster, but it is over there on the table. So please feel free to check that out and help yourself to some food. But we will see you again next month. I know I'll see all of you probably before then, but we'll see you again, same time, same place, second Wednesday. And I hope you enjoy your afternoon.
Corey, stop talking before we freeze to death.
The freeze, I'm hot, honey. He turned it down because I was roasting.